Hello YouTube. This video is the first part of my Happy Wheels retrospective, which commemorates the 10-year anniversary of the game. It released on June 4th, 2010. I intend to work through the whole 10-year history of Happy Wheels and provide commentary and context on most of the major events in that history. I will air my opinions on the status of the Happy Wheels community and how the platform may change in the near future. As I have a lot that I want to discuss, I'm going to make several videos. This first part is going to be a cursory overview of the game's early development and the format of its website. I won't be talking very much about the content of the game itself. I think that it's important to lay down the context of the environment in which this game exists and how it came to be. I'll fill in my descriptions of the game's content in future videos. This first video is really more of a site tour than a retrospective, but it includes some important details of the game's history, which will be integral to further and more in-depth discussions. Where do I begin? Happy Wheels is an online flash game and the only notable attraction of its host website, TotalJerkface.com. It is the product of the independent game studio Fancy Force. Why the game, the website, and the studio all have different names, I don't know. There's probably no reason. For marketing purposes, it would make more sense to call it happywheels.com. In fact, that domain name redirects to totaljerkface.com. What even is a jerkface? Is it this fellow? Clearly, the creators didn't have a coherent brand identity for this game early on. They had 3 different ideas for search terms that sound cool, and they decided to use all 3 of them, with no regard for the fact that they have nothing to do with each other. I kind of feel that. When I created a YouTube account in 2014, I didn't put much effort into the name. I didn't care to make a very original and recognizable name around which I could build a brand image. Now that I have actual content all of these years later, I don't feel compelled to change the name. Nah mean? Anyways, Fancy Force is a very small studio, and it basically came into existence as a way to sustain the distribution of this one game. Early in its development, Happy Wheels wasn't even an organized collaboration. The great majority of the programming and the visual art that have gone into this game originate with one person. The creator of Happy Wheels set the groundwork for the game in his spare time, while working on other projects for established game creators. When he first released the game, it didn't even have audio. He brought on other team members later to add sound effects and music. The original creator of Happy Wheels and the founder of Fancy Force is none other than Jim Bonacci. Who the hell is Jim, you might be asking? This is Jim. Say hello, everyone.
Welcome to my brand new website. Hello there, how are you doing?
Jim is the public face of TotalJerkface.com. He stands watch over all of us on the top of the page. Jim is the watcher on the wall. He protects us all. And he says some funny words if you hover your mouse over him.
Please ask me a question, okay? You're my new best friend. Oh boy, that was delicious. Get ready for the time of your life. Oh my gosh, I have so much to tell you.
I remember that there used to be an animation of him eating a burrito. However, he doesn't do that anymore. Save for a few weird changes like that, and the content of the Happy Wheels game itself, the website has barely changed in the past 9 years. It has the same three tabs: Game, which means Happy Wheels, News, and About. One day, this page will be extremely informative. When that day comes to pass, we will call it the Second Coming. The news page has changed over the years, but not by much. Jim publishes his news updates very infrequently. Sometimes more than a year passes between them. There's a survey about the art style of Happy Wheels 2, which has remained unchanged since 2014. Happy Wheels 2, yeah, that's a subject. We'll get there when we get there. But seriously, I'm very glad that we even have a news page. It's a very descriptive and well-organized forum that chronicles most of the major updates and changes to the platform of Happy Wheels. Users are able to give feedback right there on the news page, and I think that Jim really responds to communications from his fans. He has made unscheduled news updates to address sudden changes that have been concerning to players. He's invested in nurturing the platform and the community. He wants to dispel misconceptions and fears about the game, and to let players know that he's working on whatever problems still exist, even if it takes the team a very long time to actually get around to fixing them. With Flash games, it's rare to see a developer who has this degree of interaction with the player base. Just look at a lot of the games that I've played for this channel. A lot of them don't even list the names of individual developers. Often, the game's developer doesn't even work directly under the owner of the intellectual property that they are using. Look at Flambeau's Hot Mess, which is a sprite swap of a game called Firebug. Most major developers of browser games have never made much effort to build a community and to maintain a dialogue with their players. Most are content to make a game, collect whatever revenue they've made from it, and then completely sever themselves from the game's community of players. Jim Bonacci is a rare character in this case. He's really a member of the Happy Wheels player base. He's so personable. Most of these news updates are simple patch notes. Jim describes the new features that come with new updates of Happy Wheels. That's a standard procedure, though Jim writes in more detail than what most developers would care to divulge. Some of these news updates specifically address issues that users have brought up. One such example is from June of 2014. This thread addresses the infamous color glitch, which I'll address in more detail in a later video. To keep it brief, this glitch interfered with the proper use of the color selection tool within the level editor, making it difficult to create art shapes. Jim had difficulty determining the cause of this glitch because he wasn't able to reproduce it on any of his own computers. It only affected some users, including myself. But Jim reached out to the community, and they were very helpful. I mean, a few of them were. You're not going to see any intelligent comments on the most recent page. That's completely full of spam and the autistic kids that flood most online gaming websites. If you go all of the way to page 9, that's where you can see some intelligent and genuinely helpful discourse from people who care about this platform. I don't know for exactly how long the color glitch was a problem, but I remember that it was only for a few days. That's a very quick fix by the standards of Happy Wheels. The community really came together to fix this problem efficiently. Jim Bonacci has generally been quick to address unintended changes to the platform. That's especially true in regard to advertisement hosting on the website. Fancy Force has had difficulty securing reliable networks for all 10 years of the game's public history. At several points, it has seemed that the difficulty in maintaining revenue could threaten the long-term survivability of the Happy Wheels platform. But Fancy Force has been able to keep their platform operational over these 10 years, and Jim has been explicit in his communications that the website is not shutting down. There was one really horrible episode in March of 2014. Before then, Happy Wheels relied partially on an advertising platform called Mochi Media. They would display adverts on the game screen before the game itself loaded. Mochi Media went defunct in 2014. Shortly before they stopped supplying advertisements to TotalJerkface.com, they started including a message with their adverts. It informed players that Mochi Media would be going defunct, and that this would affect the revenue scheme of TotalJerkface.com. Mochi Media went further to disseminate the idea that TotalJerkface.com would lose the right to host Happy Wheels because of this change. That part was completely false. They shared this false information on the assumption that websites need to pay a recurring fee to a game's developer to host the game, and that adverts run by Mochi Media were the only source of revenue for these websites. That's a ridiculous assumption in the case of Happy Wheels. Fancy Force made Happy Wheels. They don't have to pay anyone for the rights to distribute their own game. This message, predictably, led to widespread panic on the platform until Jim stepped in to set the record straight. Fancy Force is not a subsidiary of Mochi Media, and they had other advertisers anyway. The platform was basically fine, and it has continued to be financially sustainable. By the way, Mochi Media started appending this confusing message to Happy Wheels without Jim's advanced knowledge. Very unprofessional on their part. It's possible that this message was an automated response that Mochi Media sent out to most of the game hosting websites that utilized their service. It's possible that they unintentionally included TotalJerkface.com in that list. Even that excuse is quite ridiculous. There are a lot of game hosting websites that primarily host content that they legally own. That's not a foreign concept by any means. In 2014, Mochi Media's largest partner was the game studio Ninja Kiwi. That's a studio that has developed most of their games in-house, and that hosts those games on a website that they also own. So it was extremely stupid and presumptuous of Mochi Media to make these generalizations about their business partners. Most game hosting websites are set up such that they can continue to host most of their content, even if they lose a substantial portion of their income. Happy Wheels survived that incident quite easily, but the situation was much more serious in September of 2017, when Google advertisements stopped supporting the platform. This was a substantial blow to Fancy Force's cash flow, as Google had been their largest advertiser up until that point. Jim was frank with the community on the fact that Fancy Force was facing hardships, and that the future of Happy Wheels was uncertain at that time. But we made it through that too. Happy Wheels is still publicly available as of June of 2020. The developers have been able to maintain the website through careful cooperation with smaller networks. As easy as it is to curse large advertising companies for dumping on Happy Wheels, they had their reasons. Happy Wheels has never been the most brand-safe or family-friendly game. I mean, you can massacre kids by the dozens. Most game developers and most brands tend to avoid that subject matter. Furthermore, almost all of the content on this website is user-generated, and the website supplies a very high degree of creative freedom and no meaningful mechanisms of quality control. You can effectively represent any crazy violence and profanity that exists within your imagination and the technical limitations of the game. When you load up a level for the first time, you don't know what you're going to see. So, brands have some justification in their apprehension to be associated with this game. To meet the expectations of advertisers, some of Fancy Force's internal policies have changed to control the content that appears in their game. The quality control hasn't changed in any meaningful way. Happy Wheels is now full of more garbage levels than ever before. But still, on the surface, the company's self-projected image has changed. Sometime between 2012 and 2016, the level editor stopped allowing users to publish levels that have certain cuss words in the title. There are ways around this restriction, though. You know my level, Die Like a Bitch? What if I told you that that's not actually an I? That's a lowercase l. Jim conceded this change to his game in negotiations with advertisement platforms that didn't want to appear before levels that contain cuss words. Still, this was blatant virtue signaling on the part of Fancy Force. They didn't actually make the platform safer for anyone. It's still full of simulated violence, as it has been. And these restrictions don't apply to words within the level itself. But whatever. If it marginally improves relations with advertisers, and it doesn't radically change the content of the game, I'm fine with it. Yeah, we're doing great on time. I only took 16 minutes to explain who Jim is, and how we're congregating on this damn website that's constantly on the brink of falling apart. I'll get into the game's early development. As I was briefly conjecturing before, Jim Bonacci has been a developer of Flash games since a good while before he published Happy Wheels. He started development in 2006. Information from this early in development can be difficult to find, but I found an informative interview that Jim has allowed to the blog TJF Today. In 2006, he was working under another Flash player developer named Alec Cove. At this time, Cove was working on a physics engine that would run within Flash Player. In his own time, Jim took it upon himself to make a game in this engine and test its features. He doesn't actually name the engine in this interview. From my own research, I know that Cove worked on a physics engine called ActionScript. Jim made one offhand reference to ActionScript in a post from 2014, so that's probably it. However, there's an unauthored post from 2012 stating that Happy Wheels uses the Box 2D engine. That's a very widely used multi-platform physics engine. The game's credits also call out the Box 2D community. I don't know whether or not that community includes Alec Cove. Maybe Happy Wheels uses assets from two different physics engines. The game went through at least one major rebuild in the first 4 years of development, so Jim may have integrated Box 2D during that time. Suffice it to say, Jim was tinkering around with some physics engine for about 4 years. Happy Wheels really was a quiet passion project. Early on, Jim definitely didn't expect his game to become this huge cultural phenomenon with millions of monthly players. Happy Wheels has very modest beginnings. It was one man's mode of testing his skill set and entertaining himself. And that's what's important in any artistic expression. It's a nice bonus if millions of people enjoy your game, but the true value of the expression comes from the self-actualization and the fulfillment that comes with the act of creation. I want to share this one quote from that interview. It's just too perfect. I created a guy in a wheelchair that would endlessly fall down a random hill. I thought that it was funny and stupid, so I kept expanding on it. It was only meant to be a very small game, but eventually it became my main focus. And here's an early news update viewable on the main site. It's still not finished. It most likely never will be. That's okay. I still laugh when the fat woman explodes. Hopefully I'm not alone here. Yes, Jim, you are not alone. Your game is very funny and very stupid, and I'm still laughing all of these years later. Well done, sir. These early updates are great. They're so nonchalant and non-serious. Jim was fully upfront with the fact that he was sharing this weird, unfinished machination from the recesses of his strange mind. It was half technical demonstration and half sandbox game, and all around it forgoes the conventional goals and rules of level design that you see in most games. Foremost, Happy Wheels was just a cool place to goof around and relish in immature gore humor. And enough people resonated with that wacky, off-brand demeanor, making Happy Wheels into this whole big thing that it now is. Happy Wheels is very much a unique product of independent online game development. I doubt that you'll ever see a game with this type of unabashedly weird and unconventional design coming out of a development team of more than a few people. Early adopters really had to use their imaginations to get anything recognizable as a game out of the level editor. Just look at the early levels and the tools that were available. Jim gave users almost nothing to work with. The game didn't even have audio upon first release. Jim provided users with this somewhat robust level editor and no defined rule set or guidance on how to use it. When Happy Wheels first released, it just looked like a strange experimental physics simulator, and that physics simulator had a free game included in it, if you were willing to tinker with it and share your own stupid ideas about level design and reinterpret your conceptions of what the goal of a game should even be. Incredibly, this very unusual product model caught on. Happy Wheels started as an obscure cult game, and it quickly gained a large following. Because it's fun. It's fun to just mess around in a simulated world and pursue your own ridiculous goal, or no goal at all. The early years of Happy Wheels produced some awesome user-made content, and the community and the developers alike were committed to expanding and improving the game. This concludes the introduction to this retrospective series about Happy Wheels. Thank you for watching. In part 2, I will be talking more about the game's content, including the features of the level editor and the types of user-made levels that exist.